Well, hi everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Certified Forgotten. We always start by saying we're the only podcast that talks about films with 10 or fewer reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, talks about horror films with 10 or fewer reviews. Sometimes we actually do have an uncertified episode where it's just me and Donato yakking, but we're never happier, never fucking happier than when we get to talk about a movie with an awesome guest. And I don't want to spoil anything. A lot of times when we have a filmmaker come on and they bring a movie, you can kind of see shades and little whispers of how the film they've picked and the film that they've made might be a little bit in dialogue with each other. I think this is much more overt, and I'm really excited to dig into this in a minute. Wouldn't you say, Donato?
I would say so very much, having watched both of them recently again. But do you have any spiel to go through? It's baseball season. We're watching baseball as fans. I don't know if you wanted to bake that into something.
No, I could make a joke about how we're going to record this episode for 24 hours in order to beat the shit out of Strom Thurmond, but I don't know. I think you should just introduce our amazing guest.
Cool. I like that option way better. This amazing guest that we have this week, as Monolo's mentioned, we watched their movie in addition to watching the movie they picked, so that's always a fun one. Who knows? Cannibal Mukbang does fit Certified Forgotten, so maybe that will be somebody else's topic someday later. But for now, we are bringing the writer-director of Cannibal Mukbang and also communications director of the Brooklyn Horror Festival, and I just want to call that out because that's where we met for the first time, and it's always nice when we can kind of connect dots. Aimee Kuge, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm very curious about how Cannibal Mukbang and Shatter connect. I can't wait to hear what both of you think. I have some ideas, but yeah, curious to hear what you think. So thank you so much for having me. This is so fun.
It's not the gun sex. Can confirm it's not that.
And this is the fun part for us, though, is because, like, what do you know? You're just the person that wrote and directed Cannibal Mukbang. We're the audience, so we get to recreate the meaning anew in our own eyes. That's the fun part.
Oh, I don't know anything about the film, actually.
Fair enough.
Nothing.
Well, let's start. Normally we ask our guests, talk a little bit about their early horror influences, and I want to dig specifically into your cannibal movie lexicon. Cannibal Mukbang, available to stream now, is a cannibal movie. I think you maybe gave that away a little bit in the title, which I love. But as I was watching it and I was talking to people about it and explaining it, I was like, it's got a little bit of like near dark. Actually, it's got a little bit of this other cannibal movie. I'm kind of curious what sort of cannibal films you found inspiration on when you were kind of planning the movie.
Yeah, so the cannibal thing is very ingrained into who I am as a person, funnily enough. I grew up in Colorado, so we have the whole Alfred Packer thing to unpack. The college that I went to film school at, we had a dining hall called the Alfred Packer Grill. So, cannibalism's just been kind of baked into my life, like especially with films. My mom is a really big like B horror sci-fi fan, and so I grew up just watching like tons of movies with her, like anything that was on the Sci-Fi Network, anything that she could get like from Blockbuster, like we would just watch all of it. So yeah, and then cannibalism is actually interesting because I went vegan when I was in like 4th grade and went on and off and was vegan for like 7 years. And while we were making Cannibal Mukbang, like so many people on set were actually vegan too. So there's this, for me, like I'm so disgusted by eating meat in general. So like eating human meat is the ultimate, like it'd have to be really desperate, like Alfred Packer level desperate for me to go there. You asked me about films though. So Ravenous is like one of my favorite cannibal horror movies. I love it so much. Obviously Raw, and then Cannibal Mukbang was very, very, very informed by Trouble Every Day. That's like just such a sexy, interesting slow burn. And for me, like I think that film, the cannibal scenes in that movie, like hit me so much harder than other movies that have more intense cannibal eating scenes, like Cannibal Holocaust, for example. So yeah, I've seen all of them except I haven't seen Fresh and I haven't seen Bones and All, because those were both being released when we were filming Cannibal Mukbang, and I was in denial. I was like, oh my god, of course, the year I'm doing this, 2 huge cannibal movies come out. So Yeah.
Well, I was going to say you keep an amazing tradition alive, which is you mentioned Ravenous as one of your favorite cannibal films. Antonio Bird was a vegetarian. You made Cannibal Mukbang. You're a vegan. I feel like if you're going to make a movie about eating people, you're almost required to not eat meat yourself in order to get it just right.
Yeah, I haven't had meat for since 2012, so uh, it was funny to deal with all of the raw meat on set because there was a lot of meat we got from a butcher and a lot of cooked meat like all around us.
Nice.
I was gonna say, does that inform the fear even more though? Like, not that you're afraid of meat, obviously, but working with it as vegetarian, vegan, all those different kind of things, like depending on who the director is of a cannibal movie, does that help add a level from behind the camera of discomfort?
Yeah, but I embrace that. Like one of the earliest films I made is called Oral Anxiety because I used to be really self-conscious about people watching me eat for some reason. Like I have a lot of eating issues that I've been working throughout my life, and one of them was anytime someone watched me eat, I would have to like cover my mouth. And seeing other people eat, like I didn't like it before, and then I got really into mukbangs, and now I love watching people eat. So yeah, it's just kind of a through line. Like the seeds of Cannibal Mukbang were planted very, very long ago and sort of blossomed in 2022.
And you've talked a lot in some of the other interviews you've done about kind of the romance element of the film, which is it does it a disservice to describe it purely as horror because I think it's also a very twisted and very delightful love story for most of it. I laughed out loud at one point when the brother character describes Ash as a manic pixie dream girl, which is such a anybody who kind of lived through that era and remembers the discourse remembers how that was going. So as a writer, how do you balance that that there are things that people associate with a female character in a romance movie that you're both sort of honoring and also subverting at the same time?
Yeah, well, I think that a lot of romantic films are a lot more horrific than we give them credit for. Like 50 First Dates is probably the scariest movie I've ever seen. Like if you can you imagine waking up every day with a stranger and that stranger telling you, "Oh, you're pregnant with my baby. We've been together for 5 years." And
Yeah.
then it just progresses every single day. Like that movie's so scary. Like so many romance films have this weird element of like I could turn almost every romance movie I've watched into a horror if you really
Yeah.
think about it. So, I think that the genres are actually like sister genres and for me, it was actually so easy to just infuse all of that romance and excitement into it because I'm such a romantic person. I love romantic films. I grew up watching romantic comedies like 10 Things I Hate About You and She's All That and all, that big boom of like the Seth Rogen films and all of those films that were just coming out as I was growing up. So I really wanted to play with the trope of like, you meet this girl and she just love bombs you and like how does this character respond who is pretty weak and insecure and a simp, quote unquote, like he doesn't
Hmm.
really know who he is, and so she just like, I feel like her energy and his energy are so opposite that it was really fun for me to write them together and then also see them act together too because the actors are so different in real life too. Like their energy is just palpable. And I think I got really lucky because they were able to bring the balance that I set on the page to life.
Yeah, I mean, I really like that aspect of the romantic entanglement because, anyone who's been dating long enough, you try different things. It's like, does the complete opposite attract? Does the complete same attract? And, you're what you depict obviously is a horrific scenario involving cannibalism, but at the same time, it is two people on the complete opposite sides and how that is both healthy, let's say, and also not as healthy when you go into it in a full, I think there's relationships I've had where the person just becomes an extension of me, and I'm like, that's not what I signed up for. That's not what this should be. Like, there should be two people in a relationship, but like different people.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up that point. Like, that was something that was really important for me to portray with Mark because I based his character off of me when I was in college and moving to New York, and I went through a few different relationships, both romantic and just friendships, where I completely dissolved into them, and I noticed it like after. It felt like I woke up from a dream, and that didn't mean that those were bad relationships, like necessarily. It just means that they were really toxic, and um, intentional or not, like I found myself losing myself in those, and I wanted to show that with Mark and how he loses himself so much, like his physical being and his soul and his like familial ties, like everything just gets entwined with Ash and complicated.
I do feel like though a lot of those comedies get wrong, or what a lot of stuff that deals with sort of toxic relationships rings false to me, is to those movies toxicity equals insincerity. And I think that's something that I really liked about Cannibal Mukbang is like it's not a healthy relationship, but it is a sincere relationship. These two characters that are actively pursuing and kind of in their own fucked up ways kind of doing the best that they can. So I'm curious how you managed to like, I guess with the actors, was there stuff that they brought to those characters that wasn't on the page that surprised you, or did you find yourself collaborating with them and kind of like unlocking some new character pieces just in actually getting two people in there and starting to see how they were reacting to what you wrote?
Yeah, so I mean, they both are so incredibly talented and they both have different styles of acting, but they lend themselves together very well. Like on set, Nate is actually trained, like he's done like clown school type things and he's really into improv. And so a lot of his stuff was very improv-y. Like I told him, well, he knew that Mark was a clumsy person and that whole like clumsiness can be cured. Like that's a real conversation I had with a partner in the past, like word for word, like I was the person who was really clumsy. And so I told Nate, like, it's really important that Mark is this like goofy kind of like Pee Wee Herman type guy, but who's also really charming and sweet and like you really like him. And so Nate was just like knocking things over on accident on set. Like there's a scene before he eats the meat where he like accidentally knocks over the paper towels and he's like, oh, and he's just so, like his energy's so up here. And then April's so smooth and like, hey, what's up, brain damage? Like she's just so, I don't know, so different. And like the way that they acted really complemented each other because they're both really good at like that subdued, like barely moving their face, but it communicates so much.
Mm-hmm.
But his like clumsiness and then her sort of like smooth and charming like nature, I think just really came out with those characters. And they really fell in love with them too. Like when I cast Nate, he said that when he read the script, it reminded him of who he was in his 20s. And he was like, this is literally me and a girl that I was obsessed with in my 20s. And he's like, I just felt like I was Mark when I was reading this, and I want to play him. And then with April, she connected with some of the sort of like revenge and vigilante and the anger that Ash has. So I don't know. I just got super lucky. Like they both connected personally with the characters and had different acting styles, and everything just kind of meshed really
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, I think Nate's is especially like a standout in a way because, like you said, he obviously found himself in the role, and that comes through very naturally because there is an organic dorkiness to him. There's that organic. You said simps, so I'll use that again, but it's necessary
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
what you're trying to tell and like the story that you're putting forward. It's so necessary that he feels genuine in that and not forced. And we've seen so many stereotypical comedies try that same arc, and it does feel
Mm-hmm.
like a farce. It just feels like
Yeah.
satire and over the top. But Nate really nails how to do that naturally, which again is a compliment to the talents that he is bringing to the screen. Obviously, he is a different person than that in real life.
Yeah,
But
well,
maybe not.
that actually reminds me. I was having rehearsal with him in Maverick, or the character who plays Maverick, Claybon Karlowitz, and we were in this rehearsal studio, and Maverick's character, Clay, shows up with the script fully printed out, or no, he comes up without the script, but Nate comes with the script printed out, and it's like falling all over the place. He's missing pages. Clay is like totally off books, and Nate isn't yet, which is fine. Like he didn't have to be at that point. For some reason, Clay was like completely off books, and he was so, I don't know, like he had this confidence and this cockiness to him, and he was already just like dominating over. Uh, like, but their characters like had already come to life. Like Nate's falling over, and like his papers are all over the studio, and I'm just like, I love you. You are already Mark. Like you don't even have to rehearse right now. I can see it happening.
I was going to call out Clay because I do know Clay personally, so I laughed very hard when I saw him playing a Patrick Bateman type,
Oh,
and I was just like,
yeah.
"Yeah, I know Clay, and this makes perfect goddamn sense." Not that it is who he is, but he has just that look that where he says the word "bro" and you kind of just get a chill up your spine. Like it
Oh
works
my God.
real well.
Yeah. Well, did you see him in My Bloody Banjo and Return to Nukem High?
Oh, so Return to Nukem High is where I
Yeah.
met him. Technically, I interviewed him for that,
Hmm.
and we kind of stayed friendly. So I know he has the douche bro vibe down again in acting, completely in
Yes.
acting.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I saw that casting, I was like, oh yeah, that's perfect. No, that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. On set, there was one day he ran like 20 miles before like a huge overnight scene. Like he's also a fitness freak, so it fit perfectly with
So he
him.
kind of is Patrick Bateman. I shouldn't say that. He,
Yeah, I was
Clay, if
gonna
you're
say
listening, yeah.
very
He's
method.
like the nice version of Patrick Bateman.
I like that. I want to talk a little bit about the editing for this too, Amy, because I know that is, I mean, in your years in working in reality television, editing is a really big piece of what you did. And I don't know, I feel like it's one of those things that I really appreciate when I watch a good independent film is how important editing is and how confident the filmmakers are when it comes to little things like how long a scene should go and how much is too much when it comes to dialogue and all those little pieces. And it's, you kind of watch a lot of movies sometimes and it's not quite there and you don't really feel it, but then you watch something like this and you're like, oh, this is what happens when somebody knows exactly how long a scene should go, exactly how long a shot should go, etc. So I'm curious what it was like turning years of developmental editing back on yourself and being like, where is the best version of my movie?
Oh, thank you, number one. And two, yeah, reality TV. I've seen so much footage of teen moms fighting that it's a lot. You have to turn like 2 weeks of footage into like 3 minutes.
Yeah.
So I knew when I was editing this, like we had a lot of footage. 3 big scenes got cut, and they'll make the special edition Blu-ray whenever that comes out. But I knew for me, like I love editing and I've edited for years. I knew for this I had to have a co-editor because I'm such a slow burn person that I needed someone to balance me out. Like I like quick editing. Like I edited the montage. There's a bunch of scenes that aren't that sort of like patient edit, but I needed Haley Zalkin to balance me out. And so we split every single scene, like we split all the scenes in half. We got like a sexy scene, a fight scene, a dialogue scene. Like we really balanced it out, edited it together, and it was 2.5 hours long. So
Mm.
I'm like, oh my god, this can't be 2.5 hours long. So we had to bring it down even more. And even at 140, I personally am like, oh, I could have cut some time out of it. I could have gone into that tight 90, but now I'm kind of backing up on that. Now that it's been out for a while and I've seen it so many times, like I really don't know if I could have cut it because I think that those patient scenes are what makes you fall in love with these characters and like what
Yeah.
makes you see their romance, because romance isn't quick cut. Like romance is tension and like looking at each other's mouth and eyes and like not knowing what's going to happen next. Like you can't make that look quick and snappy. You have to live with it.
And I mean,
So
also the tight 90 is a dream goal, of course. It's what people talk about and what people hold as the gold standard for what a movie should be. But
It's a little bit of a meme too, I would say. It's a bit of a meme.
I was going to say, but the reality of it is the movie dictates how long it should be. Like, there's no such thing as the perfect length because it just depends on the movie. I mean, The Wolf of Wall
yeah.
Street feels like 20 minutes to me. It feels like such a quick movie because it blows through. But then I have
Hmm.
watched 80-minute movies that feel like an eternity. It's just how
Yeah.
good you are as a storyteller, and is everything in this movie necessary? Does it keep things moving? So I feel like yes, the cut you have is the correct one because everything feels necessary. You're informing every single scene. I know why stuff is there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a low budget feature. I mean, there's a lot of stuff I wish I could have added in. Like, I would love if I saw Ash killing and mukbanging for like 30 more minutes. But like, I couldn't, I could try to do that, but then the movie wouldn't be out right now. Like, it would have taken a lot more money and a lot more time. And I believe that in the next one, there'll be a lot more gore. I'm a big gore person. So hopefully with a higher budget, there'll be more of that. But yeah, I really appreciate the cut we have right now, and I wouldn't change it at this point.
I think that a lot of people have responded, speaking of editing and gore and storytelling, that backstory montage for Ash when we're kind of, we move out of Mark's perspective, as you said in interviews better than I could. It's the only time in the film, or really one of the only times in the film, that we get to see through Ash's eyes and experience kind of what she's experienced. And I'd love to know a little bit more about how that scene came together, because it's one of those things where, you feel like there are filmmakers that would try something like that and it would not work. And it really, really works here. So I'm always curious, like, what are your instincts going into that? How do you kind of fit that at the point in the story, at the development stuff, and shoot in a way that it feels so complementary to the rest of the film?
Thank you. Yeah, so with the flashback sequence, I knew that we weren't going to be able to film it in principal photography. We did that in 14 days, and I didn't have a child actor, and I was really afraid of trying to get someone um, to play Ash's sister, to play Alexandra. And so when I was approaching that, I knew I wanted to shoot on film. I dabbled a little bit with like animation, but I'm like, I don't think this is going to be a lot longer if we do that.
Hmm.
I went to school at CU Boulder, which is like one of the most experimental film schools around. We were forced to shoot on 8 millimeter for a year and then 16 millimeter for a year before we even touched digital, which at the time I was really annoyed by, but now I'm really grateful because I learned how to shoot everything on an 8 millimeter and 16 millimeter cam, like a Bolex that I had to wind up, and then I'd have to go and develop it in a dark room and like figure out, what works and what doesn't. So for that, I actually I storyboarded like every single thing for that because I knew we were shooting on film and I knew exactly what I wanted. And I knew that it couldn't be in New York or New Jersey. Like it had to be somewhere down south. And
Yeah.
thank God April's family let us film in their backyard because they weirdly had everything we needed. Like the hog trap was there, the trailer was there, the pond was there, that random abandoned house was in the back. Like there was so much stuff that we just got there. And I didn't have to spend any money. Like I just bought everyone's tickets to Florida, and it was such a small crew. It was just me, Harrison Kraft, Danny Rinaldi, Jared Thomas, April, and then her sister was already down there. And then Randall, who I got to be my swamp man, drove from Missouri to Florida to do it. Like he was just so into it. So I just feel like it all sort of came together exactly when it was supposed to. We filmed that in March of 2023, so like pretty far after we did the shoot in August 2022. So yeah, I think it was just me waiting until the right time and trusting that like even though shooting on film can be kind of scary because you obviously don't know if any of it's going to come out, like I really trusted Harrison. We used a new Super 8 camera and it worked out. And I'm happy because I feel like the film is just it just lets you know who Ash is in like such a different way, and it breaks everything up. The rest of the film is so insular and it's so like tight, like everything's filmed so tight inside these
Mm-hmm.
houses and apartments. And so when we go to Florida, it's like you're opening your eyes like, oh my God, where am I? And you see these huge, like these wides of like the swamps and the trailer and the pond. And I think it really just lends so much and shows that Ash is a big character and she has a lot of background. And we don't know how many times she's been in a situation like this with Mark before.
So talking about the situation with Mark and some of the more, let's say, horror fun elements of Cannibal Mukbang, can you talk a little bit about I mean, you already said this is a very low budget film, but you do have some gore sets here. You are having your cake and eating it too, whatever that cannibal version is of that saying. So what stands out to me is the charcuterie board, having fun with that. There's like a skull on this flesh charcuterie board that is so fun. You do get some flesh ripping. How did that come together on a tight budget? And, what was maybe like one or two things that were like the hardest to get through, but felt like a miracle kind of afterwards?
Oh, well, the whole dismemberment scene, I really wanted a whole body. In the script, that scene is so disgusting. Like, so much more stuff happens. But because we had a low budget, like, getting an entire dead body, like a fake dead body, it's extremely expensive. So we just had uh, the chest and some arms and a leg and a head. And so we had to get really creative and we shot them talking and then all the other stuff afterwards. And yeah, I'd say that was definitely like the hardest thing to shoot and the hardest for me to deal with after. And like, I wanted that whole body. I wanted like the autopsy of Jane Doe type thing. Like, I wanted to see
Yeah.
that. And it's okay that we didn't. Like, I understand. But that was really tough. the easiest was actually the swamp because I just did all those special effects for like no money. Like it was just liquid latex and paint and fake blood and meat that April actually ate, like a pot roast that her mom made in the kitchen, covered in fake blood. And honestly, it's effective. So it has. I feel like this film has such a balance of really high quality like prosthetics that Yellow Moth makeup made for like the fake head and a lot of fake body parts. She like made all of those out of silicone and cast them from the actor. And then you have me in the trailer mixing up like fake blood, doing that. And both work in their own ways. So yeah,
And you
I
saved
got really
some of
lucky. I have
your
a lot of good special effects artists that I know, so I enlisted a lot of people.
you do a thing that I really like, which is some of your best gore is you use in the montage of Mark and Ash like getting to falling in love over murder, which is a fun way of doing it because some of the stuff in there we only see for seconds, but it looks so good for seconds that it really again hints at like the scope of what's going on here in a way that even just sort of like lingering on that might not.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you for saying that. Yeah, that was probably my favorite part of the film to edit was that montage. Just because Alex Cuervo's song is so good, and you're just editing to the beat like it's like a music video.
Yeah.
Well, I was
Yeah.
gonna say you're closer to Fresh for not having seen the movie than you think, though, because Fresh does a tremendous job of utilizing food as something that is being eaten, but food in a way that we know is a little not great. So the idea of using real pot roast to mimic the, let's say, meat of a person, it does look natural when you don't hold on it that long. Like it's that
Yeah.
perfect cover up to say, sure, douse it in blood. It looks all meaty and gory. Because I wouldn't have been able to tell that was pot roast. I was just grossed out the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. If you could tell that it was pot roast and you were like, that doesn't look like a human, then I would be asking you questions.
I know that's pot roast, and that.
You guys don't know where Donato studied abroad. That was a whole weird thing for him. Last question I want to do. Oh, Donato, any more gore heavy questions before we get into the last one?
No, I'm just enamored by low budget gore because when you
I
can
love
pull
that.
off effects like that, I mean, it's we watch a lot of movies on our side of the being a critic, and you for Brooklyn Horror, I'm sure you're watching plenty on that side as well, and it's just that idea of I have not seen it done tremendously well sometimes. So when you actually see a commitment to craft that is practical and low
Hmm.
budget and pulls it off in that way, like that is the ultimate sign of someone who cares as a filmmaker, but also like the talent behind the camera of, yeah, we can do this practically. We don't need CG or whatever, and whatever's cheaper, all that stuff. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I do want to ask too, because before we talk about the film that you picked for us today, we've talked about Cannibal Mukbang as a romance. We talked about it as a horror film. It's also a very sexy film too, in a way that a lot of people who spend all their time online saying like, "What happened to sexiness in films?" I think we can point to this one. You worked with for a low budget film. I was delighted, and it's something I've started looking for in the end credits of movies. You worked with an intimacy coordinator. You had Kennedy
Hmm.
Murray, their first credit as an intimacy coordinator on the movie, and I'm curious what that allowed you to accomplish with the actors to get some of those really great character moments and romance moments in the movie.
Yeah, I will always advocate for intimacy coordinators. I understand that some actors don't love working with them. I understand some directors don't too, but I think that embracing them and even having them come on as a consultant and it's so helpful. Like Kennedy really she really, 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 really made that sex scene work in a way that I don't know if I could have. Like we had a lot of conversations, we had a lot of rehearsals. She brought all these tools to set and she made them both feel really comfortable. I think just simply having another human that has your back that isn't like connected with the production really, like she was only there during the intimacy. So if the actors wanted to tell her like, hey, I don't actually feel comfortable with this, then she could come to me and they don't have to do that. We don't have to have this weird conversation. Like just her being the buffer between them was so amazing. And luckily we didn't have to do that because they felt so comfortable. Like they were so like easy to work with because we had practice, because I had Kennedy. Actually, during the sex scene, there was an incredible moment. We had filmed everything basically except for some of the B-roll, and Kennedy pulls me aside, and we're in the pink glow, the like from beyond bisexual lighting. She
Mm-hmm.
pulls me aside, and she's like, "Amy, it all looks really beautiful, but I think what would really make this moment for us, for the viewers, is if we saw the moment of insertion. Do you think that that would be okay? And I'm like, I would love to see the moment of insertion. Can you ask the actors that? Because I don't want to. She was like, yeah, I will. And so she brought them aside and she asked them, and they were like, yeah, let's do it. That makes it so much easier for me as a director that I don't have to go up to my actors who have just spent almost 6 hours on a metal table simulating sex, say like, hey, can we actually go again? Because I want to see the moment of insertion. Like, no, it's nice to have someone else be that person for me. So I think that if you can fit it in your budget, it really is incredible to have an intimacy coordinator. And I'll always advocate for it for anything that I do. Anything I direct, I'll always have one. And anything that I produce, I try to get one too. But
Yeah.
it's relatively new, and there's a lot of limitations for indie filmmakers as it is. So I understand if there isn't always one.
That's a strange segue, but an effective segue to talk about the film that you have brought for us today, Aimee. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about Shatter Dead. So we'll be right back. All right, welcome back. So today we are going to be talking about Shatter Dead, which is the film that Aimee has brought for us on the podcast. If you haven't seen it, it is a Vinegar Syndrome release. So unlike some of the films we talk about on the podcast, it's not that hard to find. If it sounds interesting, if you want to go see it, you can buy it directly from their website. But if you'd like to know a little bit more about what you're getting into, here's a brief plot synopsis for you. From voodoo ceremonies to rage-infected monkeys, you may think you've seen every flavor of zombie movie produced in the past 3 decades. You'd be wrong. Shatter Dead opens with the end of death, where those who have been killed simply pick back up and carry on with their everyday lives. The film follows Susan, a human survivor who, inasmuch as this could be a thing, harbors a deep prejudice towards the not dead. But as Susan makes her way across the country to return to her partner, she soon learns that dead just might be better. The debut film from Scooter McCrae, Shatter Dead, is sex, surrealism, and immortality in all their VHS glory. Aimee, you picked this movie for us. I want to know why, but I want to know why through the lens of, do you remember the first time you saw this? Do you remember what it was like to sit down and see this for the first time?
Yeah, I watched it like 4 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. Um, I got it. I got the disc and enjoyed it. And Scooter is a friend. I've known him for a while now. So it was something that I had been wanting to watch, and yeah, I mean, I was kind of in a little like SVOD, like, or shot on video, like that whole era of film phase.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of those iconic movies that was made for no budget in the 90s. And yeah, I remember just feeling like so impressed and disgusted and also scared. Like there's so many moral questions that Scooter brings up. I watched this before I worked with him because I co-produced Black Eyed Susan with him, and you know, it's such a different film than Black Eyed Susan, but it's also like so thematically, like he's interested in these really big ideas, but then brings them kind of in like down to earth with this character study, like with Susan in both films, funnily enough.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, we've had the luck of talking about a couple of I guess for lack of a better word, regional horror films, stuff that was shot hyper locally with local talent, and movies that were able to kind of break through to a larger audience. I think of the scary movie, Austin's Own Scary Movie, which stars John Hawkes and is a really fun haunted house film. And the first watching this film, one of the first things that jumps to mind is I'm really glad that somebody like recovered this, right? Like it is a extremely high quality release. It's not something that is like copied over from a copy of a VHS. because these are the first types of films that get lost. This is the stuff that doesn't make the jump to streaming archives and to Blu-ray releases and 4Ks. So it's interesting to dive a little bit. And my question in all of this is kind of, this feels like it's an area that you mentioned SVOD kick that you're particularly fond of, looking into a lot of this period of horror.
Yeah, I really like 90s horror. Like one of my favorite movies is Habit, Larry Fessenden's Habit.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something really nice about seeing the filmmaker sort of just show like where they grew up and use the people that are around and the resources they have. It's really inspirational for me. Um, and for this film, like in particular, I think that Scooter manages to just like really show a town in a way that would be really hard, even for me, like with mukbang. Like it was really hard for me to get wides. And I didn't because I was afraid of getting sued or getting in trouble for not having a permit. And he just went out there and he did it. Like he's in all these towns, he's filming cars, he's really moving around a lot, and it's incredible. Yeah.
Donata, what were you finished, had you seen this before, or was your most recent watch your first watch? And what was your
No,
reaction?
this was first watch. Brad Henderson at TerrorVision, formerly Vinegar Syndrome. I mean, he might have brought this over to Vinegar Syndrome, if I'm being honest, because he's my shot on video buddy. He is obsessed with anything shot on video, so I would not be surprised if this is one of his babies. But no, first time watch. Familiar like with some of Scooter stuff, just again through osmosis and talking to people like Henderson. I was not ready for where this was going to go. I 100% agree with the idea of big ideas, but also like intimate portrayals of those big ideas. Just alone to be able to have a new concept on zombies in the 90s is a big enough draw for me, because zombies are never going to go away. We got zombie fatigue again in the early 2010s. It's going to keep happening. But this idea that the undead are just people, and that the undead are just trying to figure out their lives as much as we're trying to figure out ours, and the balance between them, I think is very interesting. I love how they're described as just like awkward and embarrassed. What are we talking about here? This is a zombie movie, but at the same time, it's a social commentary. It's looking at society in a way that the horror genre lens does not always allow. There's no ferocity. The ferocity is against the zombies, who are literally just trying to figure out life as homeless people, basically.
It's a nice post Reagan zombie movie. I feel like, that you die and then you just keep keeping on, which is the bleakest thing I can possibly think of being committed to movie.
I was gonna say that too. It's so depressing. This film is so hard to like even grasp, like if that happened to you. And like I love that he plays with vanity too. Like I love the character who's like, I'm gonna be young and beautiful forever, and she's like spying on her in the bathroom, and there's just so many interesting things that he brings up. Like, does everybody like, is this like it's not even like a disease, or it's not explained that way, it just is what it is, so we're all just living in this limbo. um it's incredibly hard to watch. Thank you both for watching it, and also thank you, Scooter, because he sent us a remastered version
Yes.
that's only for us. He just sent it for this podcast. I asked him to, and he kindly uploaded it. So it does not exist online, really. You have to get a physical version of it.
But yeah, it is gorgeous. It like for a VHS film, not even for a VHS film. I won't even qualify it. I'll say it is very pretty what he was able to accomplish with practically nothing.
I really like that vanity angle, the character who does kill herself so that she can stay young and beautiful forever in that design, where and like her argument is actually valid. She's like, yeah, I'm not using up the world's resources, I'm not being a drag on society, I just want to be hot. I don't get it. Like, what's the big deal here? I'm not doing anything wrong. And like there's a good argument in there somewhere to that. But yeah, like to your point, it's the idea of just you die and just become this second person. Like you said, there's no zombie rule where you have to get bitten to do this, or whatever rule has been cooked up for it. It's just, hey, you're dead, because like one girl just eats some pills, another girl's poisoned. It doesn't matter. You don't escape it. It's inevitable. But that limbo is terrifying, where, for me, it can be an idea of well, if there is an afterlife, is it really worth it if all you do is just stand around in this position and that's it? You can't do anything. The one guy's trying to have sex, but he can't get hard because you need blood to get hard. Yeah, that makes sense. It's also very anatomically and scientifically correct. He's thought of everything here. But
it's cruel logic to this movie throughout. Very cruel logic.
Oh,
but
yeah.
again, that is the bleakness and the depressing aspect of it, because horror, I think we oftentimes think of the best horror movies as being the scariest and the most gore and the most, let's say, the extremes are what are the best. And don't get me wrong, like The Fly, the best practical effects, great film for it. But then you watch something like Shatter Dead, and it is so terrifying and bleak just on a storytelling level. And we kind of forget that everything starts with a good story. None of that matters if you do not have a good story to start with. So we're right back to the argument for giving indie films a shot, because, well, okay, they might not have the most money. They might not have the glitziest and most glamorous visuals. But if the script is good, that's not going to matter in the end. And sure, maybe we can sit there hoping it had, or let's say wishing it had, $1 million. But I don't know. If you tell a story, you tell a story right. And that's what I'm there for.
Yeah, and Scooter really, he utilized everything he had. I was actually talking to him about this, and he has a cameo in it. He's the guy who she steals his, car in the very beginning. And it's
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, Scooter, it was so nice seeing you like that again. I, always forget that you're in this. And he was like, well, I had to have someone do that, so I did it. He always has these cameos in his films that need to happen. And I love that spirit. And yeah, like you said, I mean, there's some things that I wish happened in this. I wish it could have been brought to another level. But it's so weirdly charming, and it just shows the 90s. It's 1994. It's that. The sets are probably his friends' apartments and things, and you just see the cars and her clothes. It was so nostalgic and cool for me to watch. I love that kind of stuff. Feels kind of like a documentary in a way.
Yeah. It has, it's a strange sister film. I found myself thinking a lot as I was watching it to Gregory Wyden's The Prophecy, which is kind of playing in the same end of the pool. Now, Donato, I see the face that you're making. It's
No,
there.
it's not
think about it.
It's
there.
not a negative face. You say things that make me think things. It's a thinky face.
It's a religious horror film about something an angel does that makes God peace off, and then the threat. It doesn't happen in The Prophecy, but the big thing in the first film is the threat that death will go away. And then, of course, you have Viggo Mortensen, delivering some world-beating lines in later in that movie. But Donato knows that I am an absolute sucker for religious horror in all of its flavors. If there is an afterlife, well, shit. But also, hey, I'm glad that I at least got to see some good movies about it before I went to hell. But I do love, I love where this movie, the future that this movie suggests. And again, this goes to what you were saying, Aimee, and you, Donato, about the big ideas behind this. The fact that there is dialogue in this movie about all we got to do is wait 100 years when everybody who's alive dies, and then it's just us dead people on the earth. That's a terrifying concept, and you don't need to show it. You just need to feel it as an audience member and kind of have that weigh on you throughout the entire film. Yeah, bleak is the only word that I could use to describe it, but the cosmic horror, right? The Lovecraftian nightmare that's peeking through the veil of this film is terrible and terrifying. And I think that gives a lot of flavor to even the smaller mundane stuff that happens in the movie, because you know what the end game is, or at least what you think the end game will be.
Yeah. Yeah, and what a simple premise. We follow this girl who's trying to find, go back to her boyfriend's house with groceries. Where is she going? What is she doing? I like that Scooter doesn't need to explain this stuff. I love movies like that where not everything is just handed to us on a platter. I like imagining how many people are there? Can they have babies? There's that baby scene. Is that baby alive, or is that baby gonna always exist like that? There's so many questions that he brings up and he never answers, and it's fascinating to me. And also, before that baby line or baby thing happened, my favorite line in the movie is that guy who bursts into the house. He's wearing a Superman outfit or something. He's prepare to be physically challenged, and then just shoots everybody. It's what the fuck, Scooter? Why did you do that? What's the point? They're these vigilantes, they're the cult, wants to just kill people to get it over with.
Well, weren't they
What do you guys think?
zombies?
I
Yeah,
think
they a lot
Right.
of them were, but I don't know if the pregnant woman was. Like, there's some of the people who weren't.
Well, so
So,
how I interpreted that is that the people who burst in are zombies, and I think I read this somewhere, which is why I kind of went
mhm.
along with it. But they want to turn the living into them, like that. Like that is the thing. They're
Mhm.
speeding up the process. It's the
oh,
idea of
I have a completely different read. Continue, please.
yeah. Well, so my read was trying to speed things up, um, because well, that's classism. That's what this all is. That it becomes a fight between two different parties, and the parties are now the living and the dead. And you're going to have
Mm.
extremists. You're going to have the Superfly guy who comes in like he's dressed for an arena rock concert and
Hmm.
reads this manifesto to them. But
Yeah.
like the world is changing, and it's any kind of Walking Dead movie. It's any kind of hopefully 28 years later comments on this, and I think it will from what they're saying. But when society breaks down, there will always be factions, and when there are factions, there will be some kind of warfare, and that's just the instability of all these situations. Like that's what this is. So it's that was my read, but go Monagle.
Well, the way that I took it is that I think those are the humans, and since they can't kill that which is already dead, their hope is just to sort of mar them for their forever, to disfigure them into eternity, which I read as a little bit fair because nobody seems that worried about getting shot. Like they're still playing cards and
Mm.
hanging out at the kitchen table right up until the moment somebody caps them in the head. So it feels to me it's sort of a very punitive and ugly and very human effort to be like, well, if you're going to live forever, we're going to make it suck for you a little bit because that's all we can do. So, I mean, I think that the common factor in either read is incredibly bleak. Really sucks either
Mhm.
way. So whether you're right or I'm right, the movie's wrong, and not wrong objectively, but wrong subjectively.
I'm Team Monocle. That's how I sort of interpreted it too. But I like your read too. Like, it's bleak. But it was entertaining to watch, and the gore was really, really good for however much it was. Like the pregnant woman. I don't know, like
Yes.
that was really hard to watch.
The
Like for
pregnant
me.
woman nursing her undead baby, whatever you want to call it in this
Yeah,
scenario,
not dead, baby.
reanimated, not
Yeah.
dead. I don't know how to call them because again, like saying reanimated informs some kind of corpse. We've seen reanimators, so
Mhm.
we know what that looks like. So I don't really know what to call them. They are just they're almost people.
What did the boyfriend call it? Folded. They're
Oh right.
folded. Yeah.
Folded. Oh, yeah. The boyfriend. God.
Well,
Yeah,
I
that
mean,
was
I've never
his
so
character was great.
frustrated.
Oh, it was so good. Okay,
I was
sorry.
so
Continue.
frustrated with him. I was so like, "Are you kidding? Like you can't just like ask her what she wants. Like if you know this person at all, you know she doesn't want to be dead. Like her whole mission is not to be dead.
well, I
And
mean,
she
like
just let you fuck her with a gun and like then you kill her? Like come on." I
yeah,
was so
that
frustrated.
entire sequence, like, talking about the idea of we follow Susan, the main character, and she is trying to get back to this boyfriend. That is her mission during the movie, and there is hope in that because she is trying to find the one thing in this world that is bringing her some kind of joy, or whatever we want to call it. And then the end of the movie is literally about like a toxic relationship. So we turn from a horror movie about the undead and what that means to a legitimate toxic relationship movie where yes, he can't get hard, so they have a nice session with a gun. There's a lot of stuff going on there. He kills her because they don't communicate, and he wants, once again we go back to this idea that the dead want the living to be like them, and it's so much better on
Mhm.
this side. What do you mean? And I don't know, is that the temptation of depression and suicide? I don't know. There's a lot of fucking things going on here.
But he wants to make sure that if she does die, she dies pretty, so
Right,
that he's
that
not
too.
saddled to an unpretty corpse for the rest of eternity,
So then we're
which
back to
is perfectly
vanity.
shitty. Yeah.
Right. So now we're at
Yeah.
vanity. And then she kills him. He falls out the window. And the movie ends with a preacher and his horde of zombies who are trying to make people okay with being dead, picking him back up and sending him right back to her. And that is just the most fucking depressing way to end this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny how the two people that were so worried about like looking pretty when they died, like him at the end he's hiding his face with his hair and he's like, "Don't look at me." And he just
Right.
has a little bruise, like a
Yeah.
cute little bruise, and he's all worried about her seeing him like that. And then he falls out the window and gets destroyed and is like a corpse going back to her. Just like the girl gets shot in the face by Susan. it's interesting, yeah, playing on vanity and like if you're gonna die, you might as well be hot, I guess. But then
Yeah.
how long can you maintain that? Like the first girl's like, oh, I need to move around because the blood pools if I sit too long. Like,
She says if she's ever going to be in public, she stands on her head so the blood will go to her face, and so she looks more normal. I like it's those little lines. This almost feels like way pre mumblecore in a way, like mumble gore, whatever you want to call it, because this is so
mhm.
dialogue driven, and what stings is what these characters are saying. And I couldn't stop thinking about the vanity characters too, and how if there was a modern update, like how good the commentary on social media would be, and how like how many influencers would be dragged into the idea of, wait, I can be hot forever and the internet will love me forever. I like it'd be
Mhm.
such a fun modern twist on those characters if Scooter was ever to do some kind of Shattered Dead update.
Ooh, I should pitch that to him. We should do that. That would be great.
like
And then, so like, do people? No one wants to live forever. Then, like, does everybody want to die when they're young?
well, they want to live
Somehow?
forever, but they want to live forever as hot and be
I can't argue with the logic. Like there is the whole scene where they're saying, he says, and again, shithole boyfriend, shit ass boyfriend, but he has the scene where he says, you live to be 90 and I'm going to have to take care of you and I'm going to be young and hot and you're not. There's a cruel kind of logic to that in this world where if death is where you end up either way, yeah, why not be young and mobile and, able to hold your own against the other hot young sexy corpses that are hanging out in the afterlife, which just happens to be this life. So you can't, I mean, it has Big Lebowski energy. You're not wrong, you're just an asshole.
well,
Yeah.
it's also
I
got
mean,
big.
go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it's got big vampire energy. Like it's the
Mm-hmm.
crux of so many vampire films. The romance at the end of, well, do I bite you and turn you forever, or do you grow old and I watch that happen before my eyes? Or it's the antithesis of spring. Like the end of spring is so emotional, obviously, because we have a character who doesn't quote unquote choose eternity, and love saves her in a way, but saves her by turning her mortal. It's the opposite in this case. It's the idea of, well, I don't know, do you really want to get old and do all that shitty stuff that comes with the flesh sack? I don't know.
It just reminds me of like playing The Sims in like middle school and high school and how I'd like make them. I'd like have a family and then have a teenager and then the parents would die and the teenager would just like live alone and then I'd do a cheat code so she's like always young forever and has like a crazy life with all this money. Like you're right. I mean, the logic is there. The logic is there. Just the way it's communicated is so depressing.
As a horror filmmaker, Amy, I was worried you were going to say your Sims activity was to put people in the pool and then remove the ladder until they drowned. So
That was
that's
I did
literally
that
what.
too.
Come on, we all did that. That's not.
And yeah, you lock them in the room and see how crazy they get until they
Yeah,
die. Like, yeah.
you
that was
turn the kitchen on fire. Come on.
our
Oh
first
yeah.
playground for mortality. Well,
Yeah.
I want to before we wrap this, I do as a last point. We had talked a little bit about these being interesting companion pieces for each other. I think we've hit on some of the reasons that I know that I saw the two films kind of in conversation, which has to do a lot with toxic relationships, with low budget ingenuity and gore, with these ideas, big ideas that are kind of floating or swimming beneath the surface. But I'm curious because you mentioned earlier, Amy, that you have some reads on maybe what Shattered Dead has influenced in your own work in Cannibal Mukbang. What are some of the things that jump out at you?
I love the way that Scooter shoots intimacy. I think that he is another director that can make things sexy when maybe they shouldn't be. Like I watched that sex scene in Shattered like twice in preparation for this just to see like all the interesting superimpositions that he would do and like how he's not afraid to show a lot of nudity. Like you see full bush, like you see like a full penetration like moment happen and it's really beautiful. Like I think that he handles that stuff really well, and it's why I wanted to work with him. And I think he did the same thing in Black Eyed Susan too, where he like really focuses on these like these really intimate, close things like hands running across a body, or someone's lip as a finger goes in her mouth. Like things like that, I think are so beautiful, and he captures them really well. And I think the juxtaposition with like how disgusting the rest of the movie is and how depressing it is that these two characters still just want to have sex and enjoy each other and enjoy their lives as much as they can. There's something really beautiful about that. And I think that similarly in Cannibal Mukbang, Ash has a mission and she's fueled by vengeance, and she's fueled by this like feminine rage, but she still wants to be intimate and have sex. Like the whole film, she's like, are we gonna hook up? Like, when are we gonna do this? And he's the one who's like, oh, no, 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 no. So I think that I love Scooter as a filmmaker because he's not afraid to show things like that. um and because he approaches it in a way that I'm not used to seeing in Hollywood films.
Yeah, there's an absolute fearlessness. I mean, we've seen how many romance scenes, we've seen how many sex scenes in films, and even the ones that push far, they're still not going to go as far as Scooter does. Like you said, this is basically softcore. I mean, this is 100% softcore porn at certain points, and the idea that we are so afraid to show that in movies when it's just fucking natural is hilarious. I mean, we can get into a whole conversation about ratings and prudeness and things of that in American cinema, but that's for a different podcast and another 20 minutes somewhere else that we don't have.
Yeah.
But
I'll throw it to Donato just to say this movie got big trouble in England. This movie was banned, and all the amazing things that happened when you had one of the video nasties in the early 90s and you were trying to import it to the UK. So by 1994, you might be like, oh, that was over, was it? No, it was not.
Please, no, it makes sense. And again, it makes sense because full Glock penetration. I mean, it's just what it is. But it's weird to say this, but it's a really interesting scene, and it looks good, yeah. and everything about it and why it happens. It's not just they're doing it for shits and giggles, but like why the gun is important and why it is used as a strap-on and all these things. I can't believe I'm saying these fucking words, but yeah, this is where we are. It's artful.
And then you watched it in the back of a car.
Right, literally, I watched it in the back of an Uber as I'm like driving home from Disney Studios of all places. So I left the most magical fucking studio on earth, and I'm watching gun fucking. That's real. Anyway,
that was the alternate title. That was, I'm sure, the rejected first title, Gun Fucking.
Gun Fucking, yeah. We got Gun Fu and Gun Fucking. God.
We didn't even talk about the oral gun scene.
No, that too. Yeah, she goes to town on it. But again, just to say, there is motive for all this. There is reason, and there is information as to why these scenes exist. And I get why that would be maybe too much for some people. But once again, the freedom of independent cinema to just make something that you're like, I don't care if this offends anyone. It works in the context of the story. It is something that is unique and original, and that's interesting. That's good.
Yeah, and I mean, tying this back into like things that have informed me, the question you asked earlier, CU Boulder, one of the biggest figures there is Stan Brakhage. He was a professor. One of his films, Window, Water, Baby, Moving, is him filming his wife give birth on film, and you see everything. Like it feels medical, but it's also beautiful. Like the way he films it is so interesting, and that's considered high art. But then you have Shatter Dead over here, and like not a lot of people know about this film, and I think there's so many parts of it that are so beautiful, and it's like that similar showing something that is natural and happens, maybe not with a gun, and putting it onto film. It's celebrated in some ways, and then in other ways it's punished. Like, I don't know. I find that fascinating.
Yeah, we often have conversations on this podcast about how horror exists at the margins to its benefit. But yeah, I think that's the duality that you pointed out too, Aimee, is that that's not always the case. Sometimes horror exists at the margins to its detriment. So
yeah.
Well, that brings me to the last question we always ask of our guests, which is finding the audience for this film going forward. I mean, this movie exists. It is available on home video. That it is something that people can see, which is already kind of a good step in the right direction compared to some of what we talk about. But what do you think ultimately is the audience for Shattered Dead? How does this movie become a little bit more well-known, especially because it has all of these thematic things going for it that horror fans are going to be looking for?
Well, we have this huge resurgence of people trying to shoot on video, and like mini DV is so popular now. You can't find a used camera anywhere. Like there's so many people that are trying to make things that look like this film and have the same style of this film. And then 28 years later is coming out. Like there's always going to be an audience for zombie films. And I think there's always going to be an audience for these sort of experimental, edgy type of things. And I think that if you're a fan of horror, if you're a fan of any like sort of zombie movies or like relationship films, I think that you'd be the right audience for this.
Yeah. Donato.
It's hard because it's got the vinegar syndrome bump, as we already talked about. But this is, when I talked to Henderson specifically about how excited he gets about like shot on video and preserving these kind of artifacts of horror history, like the idea that there's a whole other world out there of movies that just haven't been seen yet, and something like Shatter Dead is a lucky one because it got, again, vinegar syndrome attention, which gets it on VOD and stuff like that. So it's hard to be like, how does this one find its audience when it already kind of started to find its audience? But I think the farther we get away from the 90s, let's say, and the farther we get into the digital age, as you said, we're rebounding on a way that I just saw a movie at South by Southwest that's trying to be an 80s VHS film. So it does the grainy filter, it does all that stuff, and it just doesn't feel natural. No matter how many times you do it, no matter how fucking much I love Dude Bro Party Massacre 3, which is one of the best, I think, at replicating the VHS era and what it does. But still, like, the amount of work they put in to actually get their movie to look faded out and like it was shot on video, it took just so much work that other filmmakers won't do. So roundabout way of saying, this is just a neat little curio to watch, just to look at where movies are being made outside of Hollywood and what they look like and these ideas that are out there. And we always talk about originality. Go fucking find it. It's out there. You just have to put the work in. And maybe that was Henderson literally trading videotapes with people when he was a kid, but that was a whole thing. That was a whole market for a while. So I don't know, I kind of want to get back there, and I think we have the Shutters and stuff trying to do that, so we're in good hands. But still takes some work on the actual participant to go find that and be curious. Curiosity is good, people.
True. And listen, I if you've listened to the podcast and you kind of know my tastes, did I love Shattered Dead? No, it is not necessarily a movie for me. But I really liked Cannibal Mukbang, and the director of Cannibal Mukbang really liked Shattered Dead. And I think that that's kind of the fun game that we play a lot when it comes to exploring film, is that you don't necessarily need to be an advocate or champion for a particular movie, but a filmmaker that you liked is probably going to like that movie, and it's going to influence their work. And if for no other reason than our ability to continue to be in dialogue with the film industry about the films that inspired them, I'm really glad that this is accessible, and I hope that it continues to be more accessible in the future. And I may not personally be recommending it to too many people, but that's probably more a function of my social circle than it is anything to do with Shattered Dead, the movie.
It's religious, though.
It is. I got that. But kind of people that, like, I suppose I could drop it on my religious family and see what happens and be like, it's about the end of the world and what happens with God. And like, oops, sorry, I left out the last act. Well, I guess I won't be coming home for Thanksgiving this year.
I do have to ask, because I know you put Cannibal Mukbang on while your wife was working in the background, so she might have seen some of that. Did you watch Shatter Dead while you're within eyesight of your wife?
No, I did not. He was out of the house, which is great because I would have had a really hard time explaining that one.
She comes home at that scene.
Yeah, that would have been awkward. She actually came home like 5 minutes after that scene, which thank God for both of us. But I will say that my wife, if you're listening, Andrea, her takeaway from having Cannibal Mukbang on in the background, she was like, "What do you think?" I was like, "I was really good. I really liked it." She was like, "Oh, even when that guy got his nose cut off," I was like, "That's the only thing you saw. That's the one time you looked up, and for you, this is always going to be the movie where the guy cut his nose off." And she's like, "Yeah." So that's it. There you go. My wife will forever remember Cannibal Mukbang is the movie where the guy cut his nose off. So you got that at least.
Remember it at all, I'll be happy. I've always said that. Like, if you feel anything, if you hate it, if you love it, I'm happy. Just feel something. Like, just remember it. I just want it to be remembered. And that's it.
There you go.
And I want to make more movies, obviously.
Well, go rent this one, and then remember it. And also that some of that money will go towards Aimee making her next film. And speaking of kind of upcoming projects, things you might be working on, Brooklyn Horror Film Festival and otherwise, where are some places people might be able to go online to connect with you, to stay in the loop on things that are coming up on your plate or projects you might be working on?
Yeah, I'm the most active on Instagram. My Instagram handle's Melty Feelings, and I also have a Blue Sky. I think it's that too. And you can follow more information on the film at We'll Go USA and jackrabbitmedia.com. Also, meltymedia.com is my personal website, but I'm terrible at updating it. So I would definitely just hit up the Instagram first.
And we didn't talk about this, but Donato and I big fans of Wellgo. Congratulations on having them, because those are the kind of people you want in your corner for weird movies, I feel like.
Thank you. When I saw they were connected, I basically fell. Like I was like, wait, what? this is news to me. Like when Jackrabbit introduced me to them, I'm like, no way. Yeah, I'm so grateful for Jackrabbit. Shout out to all of them. They're incredible people to work with. So yeah, indie filmmakers. It's important to find distributors that care about you. That's the last message I think I'll leave.
I love that. Donato, you're about to go to another film festival. It's been a week, so why wouldn't you be going to another film festival? So how do folks connect with you online?
You can follow me at Donatobomb, DONATOBOMB, on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Letterboxd. And yes, Monocle is correct. I, for some reason, planned Overlook fucking a week and a half ago because I said, yeah, I'm exhausted already. I just finished South by. Let's do another film festival. But the real reason is I just miss New Orleans and I really want to go have some beignets and all the good yummy yummies down there. So I'm excited to go back. I will also be reviewing movies. So if you want to follow me, I will be posting the few movies I haven't seen that are playing there, because the life of a film critic is kind of nice sometimes. And you find a film festival where you're seeing 80% of the goddamn titles and you realize that you go to too many festivals, but at the same time, yeah, party time.
Sometimes it's more about the beignets than the movies. I approve of this. As for myself, you can follow me just on Blue Sky. It's Monocle at bsky.social or .app or whatever it is. I'm so bad at remembering their little chart string. And please do visit certifiedforgotten.com. We are up and live with the brand new website, which means we are now taking subscriptions for our newsletter. And if you like what you see and you like the kind of guests that we get on the podcast, you can also support us and become a member. All of the, frankly, much more than the money that we earn goes to supporting our writers right now. So we're really excited to be kicking off a new editorial calendar and having some really great unnamed, as of yet, things that we're going to be doing here in April and for the rest of the year. So that is it. That is our podcast. Aimee, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. This is a duology to remember, is what I'll say. This one's gonna stick out, I think.
Thank you both so much for having me, and I hope I get to see you at Brooklyn Horror again this year for the 10th year. It's going to be epic.
Fingers crossed. Donato, take us home.
Cannibal gun fuck back.